else, right?
Yeah, I mean, still.
And that's definitely what he strikes me as. If you guys want the chat, by the way, come here. It is there. Oh man. You know what though? I think the Moon Pie sponsorship and the whiskey, like that's all you guys need for the next like month or two, right?
That's it. I mean,
there's no. Who cares about players?
Look, last year it was the imminent collapse of our league and team, and this year it's Moon Pies. I mean, come on, I'll take it.
Moon Pie for your crippling depression.
That's actually on the Indiana state sign when you cross the border from Ohio.
For your crippling depression?
For your crippling depression. You stop in at the rest stop, they give you a free one.
Oh, wow. That's huge.
I'm coming. I'm on my way.
Yeah, I've actually left. This is now on tape delay.
Prepare to be disappointed.
Well, fair enough. Hey, everybody. Welcome to a, I don't know, hastily thrown together episode of the USL show. Big thanks to our friends at Roughneck Scarves, your home for MLS, USL, and all scarves US soccer related. You can also get scarves for your club. Check those guys out, roughneckscarves.com. Also, big thanks to the Beautiful Game Network of Podcast for putting this on. Real cheap plug. I'm going to be on the Football Foundry tomorrow or whenever that drops. So look for that. Reason. At the BGNFM on the Twitters, bgn.fm on the internets, also uslnews.com if you want to read some USL news. How about that? Not the usual cast of people, although there might be people dropping in and out. I'm not sure. Instead, you might have heard him when Brandon Miller educated all of us on how to actually, reward goalkeepers for their season. You might have for Indy 11. It's Richard Rainwater. What's up, man?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for being here. I'm living my best life. And also joining me, I should mention that I'm your host, I guess, maybe. Evan Valella, I'm here. How's it going? Also joining me, it's your favorite Pittsburgh resident, maybe, depending on how many you know. Justin Ashcraft.
Hey, what's up?
I'm living my best life. It was it's been a lot of roster moves for some teams, and then other teams are going to be quiet for a little while and probably get back to us on that in December. So this is going to be kind of a hybrid. Let's talk about roster moves and answer some Twitter questions. So I'm excited.
Let's do it.
Let's do it indeed.
Here we go.
I guess because they're the first team I pulled up and it happened back on November 2nd, and I don't think we talked about it. North Carolina picks up Stephen Miller, as well as Alex Tambakis, Aaron Guillen, DJ Taylor, and Graham Smith. So 5 pickups there on extension. Tambakis is a huge impact player for those guys, and there's a couple players I think every team has across the league where if you can just re-sign them, you're going to do that. And Tambakis is definitely one of those guys for me.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, and North Carolina had a bit of a rough start, but, I mean, they're not that far off of playoff positioning by any stretch. So, I mean, it was a huge pickup. Sometimes your re-signings are better than your new signings. So, to bring him back in for their second USL season, it's going to be good news in Cary.
Yeah, I think Louisville obviously is teaching us something about consistency, and
yes,
if you keep bringing the same players back, if you keep a core together, then you can sustain success. So I think it's good when you've had some sort of success, and I mean North Carolina didn't have a great season, but they're close. And so as much of that as you can bring back and not have to start again at the beginning, that's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Really what Louisville taught us is if you can convince your players that Be Groundhog Day, and just keep doing it, then you're fine. So yeah, I mean, Louisville City hasn't announced anything yet, probably because they're a little preoccupied. But I'm sure we'll see another, like, from them this season coming up. Another one, Red Bull 2 announced a couple returning players on the 13th. Amanda Moreno, Jordan Scarlett, Chris Lima, and Tom Barback. Big name in there, I guess, Moreno probably. But I think Stroud is great. A couple declines for them. Scott Levine, Nico De Vera, and Lucas Stauffer. Jose Aganaga, which is a big one. And Steven Echeverria, as well as Andrew Lombard. Andrew Tenari also out of contract. Again, out of contract is weird because I wouldn't be surprised if Red Bull think about bringing up Andrew Tenari to the first team, perhaps. But as terms of the guys that got declined, Jose Aganaga is a pretty solid midfielder, and I wouldn't be surprised, especially now with more teams and more leagues. Even I definitely think he finds a home somewhere.
Yeah. Seems like a pretty good basis there for players there. It was a little bit confusing to me because I was wondering what players of theirs they had on MLS contracts. Was one thing I was curious because I was looking up for Indom on there, but I want to say he's on an MLS contract, if I'm not mistaken.
I would imagine. Oh, it's a wild goose.
I've invaded.
Hi, Goose.
How's everybody?
Joining us because I asked him to, and he's really good at accepting invites at the last second. He's softer than a down pillow. It's the Bernie Sanders of the United Soccer League. And you know what? He got way more teams involved this year. So Ben Gosshorn, our dear friend in the Charlotte area.
Yeah.
What's up, man?
I'm good. I would have been here sooner, but Cookout took forever. I don't
That's
know
all
what
right,
the
man.
deal was.
Listen,
Yeah.
our dear friend Mark Turner, who I jokingly called Jake Edwards for about an hour last week, didn't catch any flack for that, by the way, which thanks everybody at USL. You guys can take a joke. I love it. Was eating tacos. So, I mean, there's definitely more important things than me.
That one.
And food is definitely more important than I am. So it's fine.
Yes. Luckily, I just got a shake, so there won't be any random interruptions, and it's gone. So
that's all right.
I won't be
good.
eating a shake during the podcast because that's not good quality. I've learned from that mistake.
Fair enough. Guys, any other thoughts on the Baby Bulls? They're academy kids. They're going to be just as good as the guys they lost. I'm imagining. So, yeah, that's the roster turnover, and those guys end up being just as good as the guys before them, which is
we'll probably see them back in the East.
Really, a credit to that system, if nothing else. Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Ottawa also announced their moves, but that's still loading because for as pretty as the new website is, it doesn't load any faster.
Oh, it still doesn't.
It still doesn't. I like it. It's really nice, but it doesn't load faster.
This is going to sound really hipstery, but like 2 years ago it worked fine. This last year it just went to crap. I don't know.
Yeah.
The fact that you guys know what the Ottawa website does or doesn't do and when it loads tells me the level of research that you guys do.
You got to be crazy to follow this league, guys. And what what's crazier than lamenting about how fast the website loads? Hey, Justin, the Hounds made a bunch of roster moves. Do you mind talking about those while this website tries to get itself together?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think they, I think when you're talking Hounds, you obviously want the core of your team back the way that they were able to perform this year. So, I mean, the players they kept, Toby Adewale, Nico Brett, no surprise with either of them. Dabo, Jordan Dover, Canardo Forbes, Cristiano Francois. Noah Frankie, Joe Greenspan, Kevin Kerr, Kyle Morton, and Tommy Van Kiesel. So, I mean, really no surprises in there as far as players coming back or players that they kept. I didn't go, oh, Dan Lind, not on there. Kind of a surprise. I don't know. I mean, Kyle Morton was the clear kind of number one going into the season, I think, and then tearing his ACL at the beginning of the season. So, I mean, I think that's where they wanted to go anyway. So I'm not overly surprised at that. I think the big one that everybody in Pittsburgh is like, what, was not re-signing Hugh Roberts. So I'm not sure. I'm still not sure about that one. But you know, you never know. Sometimes it's in this league, it's like you like a guy, but the coach might not or whatever. So, but I don't know. I'm surprised with no Hugh Roberts on that list.
Yeah, seems like they're bringing a pretty good core back. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's the middle of the field. I mean, you think about, you know, Adewale and Greenspan were pretty much for a good portion of the season where you're starting Forbes in the middle of the field, and then you're bringing, you know, Nico Brett back too. So you're taking that middle of the field and then you're just adding some pieces to it. So I think the other one I was surprised by was Ray Lee, because I mean that's a Lilly guy that he brought to Pittsburgh. So I was surprised that he didn't get re-signed. And then the other one that I mean, not surprised for his talent, but he had put a post on Instagram that made it sound like he was saying bye, and then they re-signed Francois. So I was like, what? Because it was like his post was like, thanks so much to the Riverhounds organization for a great year. It was like, oh, I guess he's not being re-signed.
Right.
But then they re-signed him, so I don't know what that was about.
He's just a very gracious person, you know?
Yeah.
That's good.
It was weird.
Interesting.
And then Forbes was another one. Forbes was another one that they actually signed, and then they announced that they had given him a new contract. So they had picked up his option, but then signed him to a year-long deal with another year option. So that probably was just a raise based on the way he played and the fact that he'll probably be the captain going into next season and all that kind of stuff. So,
I don't know why it's all Eastern Conference team. Well, it's not. There's one Western Conference team, but it's mostly Eastern Conference teams, and I just wonder if that's paperwork kind of thing. Ottawa announced their first moves of the offseason last week, Tuesday. No, October 23rd. My fault. It's been a while. We got caught up in playoff things, so sorry we haven't talked about roster moves, but
those pesky playoffs.
We'll have time now. Ottawa announced their first moves of the offseason. 5 players. Nana Adekora is back. Kevin Oliveira is back. Also remaining under contract, Maxime Tissot, Anua Obasi, and Jamar Dixon. Club is still talking to, I believe, Carl Hayworth and Eddie Edward, as well as Chris Manella, David Monsalve, and Jeremy Gagnon Lepere, which is like any of those weird French names are my favorite. Also, following the conclusion, this is a big one. Following the conclusion of his loan agreement of Max Crépeau, the Montreal Impact are going to bring him back, and Adonijah Reed also is back with FC Dallas. So, no goalkeeper of the year going to come back for Ottawa. I imagine Montreal is going to at least make Max their number 2. And then Adonijah Reed, who I really liked kind of towards the end of the year when he got there. Number 8 on the 2018-20 under-20 list, by the way. Going back to FC Dallas, he's a really crafty midfielder. Departing the club as free agents for Ottawa, it's Callum Irving, who's a pretty solid goalkeeper. Clement Baya, David Edgar, Daniel Kanumbe. Midfielders, Sergio Ignacio, Christian Portilla, which is a big name. And then forwards, Gabriel Belbinati and Steven Dos Santos, Daniel Haber, Azaki Lubayera, Jimmy Sagnon, and Tony Taylor. So some decent names to chew on there for Ottawa. If clubs are looking, I think Steven Dos Santos is a really strong name and a really experienced forward. Callum Irving is a solid keeper. Daniel Haber has been effective at points. Christian Portilla, another guy. So I think that might be, and I'm a little, I mean, that's probably one of the better free agent groups coming out of a team for sure. That Fury roster moves.
Yeah, it looked like there was a chunk of players I was kind of surprised they didn't bring back. I didn't honestly know that Adonijah Reed was I guess a loanee from FC Dallas. So that makes sense that he's going back to their squad. Because I want to say he had a very good year this year. If memory serves me right. He had a hat trick in one game, didn't he?
I believe.
I think so. Okay. Yeah, I was kind of surprised by Dos Santos as well. He's not returning. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, I thought he was a pretty well standing player for them, or quality player, I guess. Yeah.
You also wonder a little bit, I think with all these roster moves, you also wonder a little bit if some of these guys are being invited back for preseason, and coaches are hoping to like find, not that they always want to go back because sometimes they feel hurt by that not being guaranteed something, but I wonder some of that, is like, yeah, we don't necessarily want to sign you right now, depending on what happens in MLS cuts and all that kind of stuff. But maybe, so you wonder some of that.
Yeah.
I think some of these better players too might be like, well, maybe I can get an MLS contract. Yeah. If I don't, sure, I'll come back to Ottawa.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think missing the goalkeeper of the year is going to be a huge miss for Ottawa.
Yeah.
I mean, that goes without saying. And it's not surprising, at least to me, to see as much turnover as there is, considering that before, their keeper really lit USL on fire and had, what was it? I think it was 15 clean sheets by the end of the season.
15 or 16. It was the record. I don't remember how many it was necessarily.
So before you set the record for clean sheets, which is pretty much the sole reason why they were in playoff contention. I mean, they had a really slow start. They were really kind of struggling to put it together. So I'm kind of on the same level as Justin, that I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of them come in preseason or come in training camp as invitees and, kind of pick the best of the bunch, but they're probably not very committal, especially since he's not going to be coming back to bail them out this year.
Right. Well, and I mean, we saw what happened with Toronto. A little different, but when they lost Cavalluzzo, it wasn't great. And then the other thing I think for Ottawa maybe is there a push for them to try to go more Canadian? Not that they're not incredibly Canadian.
There's Canadian Premier League pressure. I know that the Federation in Canada has been putting a lot of pressure on them to join the Canadian Premier League and jump from USL. And, so far they've resisted it because they don't want to join a league that they don't know is going to be around in, 4 years.
Yeah, and
NASL.
I think the Impact want to keep them in USL too because the Impact need to have an affiliate, and that one just kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of teams where they can hook up with anymore, really, that make any kind of geographical sense.
Unless we see FC Montreal rebirth.
What a
League
weird
One,
team.
baby.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. What do we got here? Rising roster move as of today, matter of fact. This one's actually current, everybody. Don't worry. New Zealand international midfielder James Musa returning to the club for 2019. 26 appearances, little over 2,100 minutes of action in his first season with Phoenix. 1 assist, 15 key passes. Missed the playoffs and the end of the regular season with an injury. Third for Phoenix Rising with 42 interceptions, fifth in clearances with 57. 26 years old. He's good. He was one of the cogs in that midfield machine for sure. And as good as I thought Colin Fernandez played in the playoffs, listen to that interview. He's a good kid. I just wonder if Musa was there, if things would have been a little, I don't know. I still think Ownby would have really bothered him on the wings, but maybe they would have gotten a little bit more control, a little bit better service in.
Yeah, I mean, seeing the game in Louisville, one thing that really came to my attention was that there just wasn't that connection. in the midfield. Is you had Drogba that was dropping back to try and make plays, but at the same time he was also trying to go forward to be on the receiving end of plays, and he was kind of, you can't be in two places at once. So his absence was definitely felt. And yeah, I mean, this is going to be a huge signing for them as they try to claw their way back into the championship game.
Yep. And then the last roster moves that I'm aware of, Bethlehem Steel today brought the hammer. Well, the union organization actually, both teams brought the hammer down, but to keep it USL related. Declined options on Brandon Aubrey, AJ Patterson, Mike Catalano, Omar Holness, Aiden Apodaca, as well as Santi Moore and Chris Nanko, which are two pretty decent names. Prosper Chaluya and Antonio Loqua also returning to their parent clubs out of loan. Bethlehem Steel did say that they are in discussions with Matt Mahoney, James Chambers, and Drew Skundrich for 2019. Guys, if I don't see Santi Moore or Chris Nanko in the Eastern Conference of the USL Championship next year, I'm going to be very confused.
Yeah, those are two players that I think any team in USL almost should be like, yep, I need those two. Yeah. And I would almost put Brendan Aubrey in that category too. Like if you need a defender, like you need to go get that guy.
And I think AJ is really solid too. I don't think he got enough minutes, but he's really solid. Mike Catalano is a big name. Good Lord, if you could keep Omar Holness healthy, that's a huge signing. And then I'll throw it out there. I tweeted it earlier. I think if you can get Aiden Apodaca steady minutes in a counterattacking system, he's 10 goals easy.
10 goals is good. That's a quality contribution.
Small, but he's strong for how tiny he is. And he's pretty crafty. So yeah, there's a good bit to pick from here. And as much as I, from a we want to go younger standpoint, understand these moves, doesn't mean I have to like them.
No, you don't.
That also could be, like I think it's the same thing for a lot of us here with Hugh, where it's we know him or at least listen to his podcast and he's a part of the network and he pops into the group chat that we have, where it's like, yeah, maybe we're a little biased because like we know that guy, somewhat quasi personally, and they're good people. And Chris and Santi and honestly all those guys that I just named off are really just good dudes, and I hope they get jobs, which is how I feel about everybody that gets released in the off season. I hope they get jobs. So hopefully with more teams, more leagues, stuff like that, that'll be a thing. But yeah, there you go.
It is interesting to see that there's that much of a change, though, because Nanko and Moore have been, this may sound silly to say, but they've been a pretty good mainstay on their squad for the last couple of years. So it's interesting that it's got to be an odd situation as a player, too, because you essentially had to completely transition your mindset where you've been a part of a 2 team to build to an MLS team, and now you've got to figure things out.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Yeah, it's not even like they had bad years,
No.
And that's got to be the other confusing part too. Is I having never played myself, I wouldn't know, but you can imagine sitting there on your couch thinking, okay, we did really well, we're building towards this, and then you're like, wait, you mean I got to move?
Yeah.
Like that's just nuts. But I heard Indianapolis is really nice if Moore's interested. Real estate's cheap, we're friendly. If you don't mind football lines.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, those are all actually really good points. Especially, Santi Moore, who was the second place finisher and rookie of the year. Not 2018, but 2017. I realized halfway through that sentence, if I said last year, it would be confusing. And he was good for close to, or if not 10 goals this season. I think he set a career high. Really good with his feet. Scored twice against New York City FC. Friendly. So, yeah, definitely some good names there. And Nanko is a guy off the bench. I think is immense. I think he scored this year, having been on the pitch for like 15 seconds. So, yeah. Transitioning into our questions, Harry, who's in the live chat, but is very kind enough to ask us questions on Twitter at Ramical. Too early to ask about the schedule release date? Yes, it is.
yes, it is.
I would not dare do that. I mean, literally, I could ask that, tomorrow to the league, and I'm sure I'd get a wait for it because we're
coming soon. Meaning February 12th.
when it happens, it'll happen, and we'll be here. It's fine. No, I mean, maybe end of January, early February for that one, if I had to put a date on it.
Probably sooner this year than last year because there's not a league that's dying that we know of. I don't want to speak too soon.
Don't jinx anything.
Yeah. I guess like the NISA can't die because it hasn't began yet. Maybe it has. I don't know.
Schrodinger's league for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, Harry, hang tight. It's all right. We got you. Well, as soon as we can, / are allowed to. What else we got here? And he also asked, which we can actually answer this one, so we will. Are we happy with staying with two conferences, which would mean Swope and St. Louis to the east?
Yes. I will say, I mean, is Swope official?
I don't think so.
I mean, I don't care which team. It has to be one of those southern. It has to be a southern team. It has to be one of the Texas.
Right.
But I feel like that only helps the Eastern Conference.
Yes.
I feel like the Eastern Conference looks weaker. I think when you lose your mainstays like Richmond, Penn FC, not that Richmond was good last year, but you lose a founding member like Richmond.
Yep.
You lose Penn FC. Obviously Cincinnati. Obviously knowing you're losing Nashville, I feel like a lot of those teams that could move, St. Louis, Swope, are good teams that can raise the quality again of the Eastern Conference. So, I mean, I'm happy about staying with two conferences for now, just because I think it makes the Eastern Conference stronger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think it makes a lot of sense stability-wise, because I mean, quite frankly, this last year they've had to start a whole league. They've had some things to deal with, and on top of that, I feel like until you've not that the USL will cap out at a number of teams, because I mean every other week or so or month it's a new team is rumored or this, that, and the other. But I feel like you have to have a stability of these are the teams we're working with. Now let's paint the lines and figure out what states are going to be West and East and Central. And it's interesting that St. Louis is going to change conferences again.
I feel bad for them.
Yeah. I'm glad to have them back.
I love St. Louis. That team, I think, plays better in the East.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're one of those teams that's right in the hunt for a playoff spot now, for sure. I really like what they've set up there as far as the club goes. I really like what Pulis does as far as a coach goes, and I really enjoyed having them in the Eastern Conference. So yes, it really sucks that they've literally been in two different conferences in 4 years, meaning they went West East. But if you're St. Louis, you are asking the league, not so politely, to please never do this again.
Yeah.
If this is it and they just promise to not move you come hell or high water, then you're fine.
But the other thing is your road trips become so much easier this year. You're not having to go to Orange County and Portland and Vancouver.
Right.
You're not having to do these crazy West Coast trips. You know, your farthest trips become New York City and Tampa. You know, that's very different.
Yeah, Ottawa.
I think it makes sense too because they don't know what other teams might drop.
I think they're really close though. Like I think if anyone drops now, I think it's a complete like out of left field surprise.
I think so. But I mean, it makes sense to keep it where it's at. You know, you got 2 conferences. Let's see how things shake out. You know, not only introducing new teams, but especially some of the older teams that maybe got used to D3 budgets, D3 players, you know, D3 crowds. And as the league moves up and up and up, make sure that the teams that you have are stable enough to go up with you before you go adding a third conference and shaking things around and completely changing the format only to have to go back a year later.
I will say, if it's Swope Park, that's going to be so fun because you have arguably basically 2 of the best like MLS 2 sides in the league that are going to play each other for basically the first time. In Red Bull and Swope Park. And then Bethlehem's there, obviously. And I just think the East's host of 2 sides has traditionally been stronger. And it's only going to get stronger with Swope Park. And I think that'll make it a little bit easier of a pill to swallow for people if you just have the best MLS 2 sides playing each other, if I'm honest. We'll see.
I think it's hard to argue their stance in the league if they're producing well on the field.
Yes.
At least that's my opinion. I can see the argument either way, really. But if they're competitive, then who's to say that they don't belong? But people will. I mean, obviously.
And then another question from Home Sweet Soccer, and I feel like we could be here for a little while. Who do you think will get MLS contracts this offseason? In parentheses, not from Cincy. Yeah, I mean, so San Antonio signed him, but I feel like Lance Lang was one of those guys. I will never be surprised if Aiden Quinn gets a contract. I will never be surprised if someone takes a flyer on Brian Ownby. I will not be surprised if Red Bull bring up Hassan and Dom, especially because of the last 2 months he's put together.
I feel like there wasn't a completely obvious person who's been a mainstay in the league that's just up the level. I mean, there is Cameron Lancaster, but he's an older player, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
I think he's like mid-20s. Please hold.
I mean, he was going to be my question. Like, does he get, like, because, I mean, like, Romario Williams went up after, because he was like, wasn't he the, like, goal scoring leader in 2017? Yeah. He got signed. You know, and I just wonder if there's a team out there that just needs a goal scorer, you know, in MLS who just needs a goal scorer who, like, would take a flyer on Cam.
I do not know his international status, which might complicate things for MLS teams because that's the thing that happens. However, Cameron Lancaster just turned 26 on the 5th.
Okay, so that's not.
So he's right in his prime.
Yeah,
and I think
that makes sense. I
think there's enough teams that need a guy that can put up half those goals because I think realistically he's not going to score 26 or whatever the hell. Against a little bit tougher opponents, against maybe a little bit better goalkeepers when he has to travel more, et cetera, et cetera. Not that he's not used to that being from England. But, you know, a guy that puts up 15 goals in MLS, it's a pretty hot commodity.
Yeah.
And even off the bench, I think Cam could do wonders for somebody. So we'll see. Anybody else out there?
I was just thinking about that question. I think it's an interesting question because there are guys like I don't know that I was expecting Mark Anthony K to get a MLS contract coming out of last year, but like LAFC was like, we need a speedy winger type guy, and like he fits the bill.
He did great with that until that terrible injury where he, I think, broke his leg. But he was a stud for them. which good on him, you know? And I hope we see more of those guys where it's not MLS2 kids like, you know, your Derek Joneses and your Anthony Fontanas and your Brendan Aaronsons and your, you know, Efren Alvarez's and your, you know, Bezecourt and Velo type guys. Like, I hope there's guys where it's like, yeah, he was good in USL, and then he gets that bump up, like Mark Anthony Kaye, where it's like, yeah, he played really well for Louisville City, and then LAFC brings him in, and he just takes the ball and runs with it.
I think, too, for Indy, so with the NASL dying like a sun at the end of its life, and, you know, having to sign players, we actually got a couple of players that didn't quite make the cut for MLS rosters, but have MLS experience. So one name familiar to you, Evan, is probably Jack McInerney.
I'm very familiar with Jack Mack.
So I would not be surprised to see Jack Mack maybe get another look at MLS after putting together a somewhat solid USL season. Suni Saad is another one who I would be surprised if he suits up for Indy 11 again. I mean, I think he produced enough highlights and did enough on the field that, you know, I would not be shocked to see, at the very least, to get a training camp invite, if not start the season on the MLS roster.
Kyle Becker is another guy.
Yeah.
I think he's very good. Canadian international.
Oh, he's Canadian. I did not know that.
I think there's a bit of want for him. I'm trying to think Western Conference just because I feel bad. Thomas Evolson.
Yeah. He was pretty good this year.
And he fits the build too.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like, oh, he scored a bunch of goals in USL, but like for MLS, he's tiny. He's a big dude. If Forrest Lasso wasn't with Cincinnati, you got to pull the trigger on a guy like that, especially off of set pieces.
Yeah, and he's got a great name.
He does have a great name, and he's huge.
Yeah,
he's massive.
I'm wondering I'm wondering how much Nashville is paying Pickens.
He can't make it, right?
I mean,
I know goalkeepers have a long shelf life, but he's like 36.
Yeah, but still, like, if you need I don't know, if you get an injury, late preseason,
Lynn is more likely to land in MLS.
At
the very least, get tucked away on a 2 side, you know, similar to what happened to
Mitch Hildebrandt.
Mitch Hildebrandt.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Goes to training camp, gets a shot. At the very least, he's starting on an MLS 2 side back in USL.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of obvious to say, but I feel like what we've generally been saying is that it just depends on an opportunity, really.
Yeah.
And a need, because I will definitely agree that Mark Anthony Kaye being signed for LAFC, I thought he was a good player. I didn't know that he was an MLS quality player. That kind of surprised me. So there could be certainly some surprises.
And I wonder if some of that is guys that get international experience in some of these smaller countries. You know, I'm wondering if that was part of Corey Burke's success. You know, he has a good season in 2017, gets some Jamaica experience, and then has a good season for the Union this year. Yeah. So I'm wondering if, some of these guys who, and Mark Anthony Kaye was the same way. You know, he's a good player. Canadian, got called up to Canada a few times, and now he's playing for LAFC. So I wonder if some of that helps some of these players.
I think the better CONCACAF is, I think if you watch the growth of USL, and I'm not saying they're related necessarily, but I think USL teams are a little more tapped into the vein of CONCACAF than MLS teams are, maybe because there's not international roster limits for most teams, or it's still decently cheap to grab these guys from Jamaica or Canada or whatever. But if you look at the growth of CONCACAF, you see a lot more of those guys, Canadians, Jamaicans, Peruvians, Colombians, I think I just dropped in the combo bowl there for a second. I apologize. But you you see the growth of the U.S. and Mexico and Canada and the Caribbean as soccer countries, and you see these guys pop up in USL and they put in good shifts. And if you talk to a coach that's worked in the U.S. youth system or that has experience in CONCACAF or with MLS teams that's in USL now, that's where they're looking for next year. It's CONCACAF and CONMEBOL, and it's Africa. Because there's been a lot of guys that have come up through USL that have been from there. And like you said, Justin, like Mark-Anthony Kaye, Canadian Youth International. And 3 years ago, I would have been like, that's cool. And now I'm like, that's a team that could like make it to the Gold Cup final one of these years, like soon. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to see who all these teams bring in as far as internationals go.
I guess you could kind of look to see the coach for the team that they're on. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, you see Mark-Anthony Kaye, James O'Connor was leaning towards MLS at that point, and now is in MLS, obviously. You see Enzo from Charlotte that made the jump up there with the Colorado affiliation, but Jeffries has MLS experience, and I would imagine because of that, people respect his opinion and whatnot. I don't know the situation in San Antonio with that Ibiaga. I'm going to mispronounce it. The defender, the very good defender. But I almost wonder if that's another way to look at it as well.
Well, they were affiliates with New York City.
That makes sense.
That's a really easy scouting report to get. Not that I didn't think he was going to end up in MLS anyway, because he's big and a really good center back. But no, and Gary Smith in Nashville. It's a guy that's won the MLS Cup with the Rapids. So it'll be interesting to see what he does a year away from MLS for them, probably. Guys, the other thing I like doing, because we're officially in the off season, is to get kind of your end of season thoughts and things on the team that you're closest to / cover. So, Richard, I guess I'll start with you to totally put you on the spot. Other than really good acquisition with Moon Pie kit sponsor, how was 2018 for
announced?
Oh, hasn't it?
No.
All right. So allegedly.
Yeah, that's so the story behind that is it was on their Twitter page, and they had a series of Moon Pie related tweets. So I had a very strong wish to replace their longtime sponsor with Moon Pies, but I don't know if that is going to be made official this season.
Okay. I mean, if Trey wants to.
Come on, Trey.
Yeah, come on, man. You got used all that pool that I know you don't have.
You're not announcing any players. What else are you doing? Come on, let's do it.
You've got nothing else going on over there.
Come on.
The whiskey one is huge.
Yes.
Huge.
A whiskey Moon Pie? No.
Oh, well, okay, that sounds good. But no, it's a whiskey sponsorship.
Yeah.
With drink your troubles away with. Anyway, after every India loss, we will give you a fifth of insert whiskey name. It's probably not great, but I'd take him up on it. Anyway, so Richard, your thoughts, I guess, on 2018 as a whole, and then if there's anyone you're looking forward to seeing again in 2019.
Yeah, I think 2018 can only be described as a success, and I've said it a lot in kind of what I've written. I know Brian has echoed the same thing. At Soccer with Brian is the other BGN written kind of Indy 11 correspondent. But yeah, we've kind of mentioned it on and off that, I mean, it was just chaos. The league is gone that you're playing in, that you don't know if your team's going to take the field. And that was a big reason why the schedule was delayed so much, is that we kind of in the literal last minute hopped into USL and then threw a coach and a team and a stadium together. And we're like, all right, let's play.
Here we go.
Here we go. To actually come out of that and make the playoffs, and that alone is a very successful year. But Indy was very competitive against the top teams, as long as you don't look at the Cincinnati score lines. But other than that, I mean, they were very strong against Louisville in the regular season. They played well against Pittsburgh. They played well against Charleston, so the other of the top 4 teams. So I mean, that's all that you can really ask for. I think next season is going to be significantly better because there'll be actual off-season and cohesion and training. We already know Rennie is coming back. That's about the only official announcement that Indy 11 has made, is that Martin Rennie will be back as head coach. So that continuity is going to be good. I'm hoping that they manage to bring back Owain Fawn Williams. He was on loan from the Scottish Championship. A really unknown player. None of us really knew who this guy was, and he just came in from day one and took the number 1 spot. Played every match for him. So he turned himself into a top 5, top 10 goalkeeper in USL, and we're hoping that he comes back and kind of continues on and anchors the defense. And we'll see how 2019 goes.
Fair enough. I love people coming over from Scotland, and I'm biased, but Ireland. I think they get it. They put in good shifts. They know what their role is, and they excel at it. And it's a weird parallel, I think, like to compare USL to like not the Scottish Premiership necessarily, or at least not Rangers or Celtic, but I think there's similarities between maybe an Aberdeen or Hibernian or Kilmarnock. Thank you. And like, your better Irish Premiership teams like your St. Pat's and things like that. Anyway, that's a tangent. Ben, since your mic's not muted, talk to me about the Charlotte Independence. I will also say, if you want to hear like a weekly summary, I don't know what you guys' plans are for the off season is, so sorry to put you on the spot, but if you want a summary of there's not one. Great.
No, we're going to enjoy the off season.
Maybe follow along with their results. Then feel free to listen to our friends at Talking Jacks. It's Ben and Alex Warren, who is I don't know, maybe the brains of the operation, but you guys do a fantastic job.
Thank you.
And you talk about the Charlotte Independence, and you were in fact also very kind to me personally on the Twitters for a year-end thing. I have one of those in the works. I don't know if I want to make it an article or just tweet it, but I'll get there. But talk to us about the year that was for the Charlotte Independence, and maybe if there's someone, this question's always a little bit better for teams that didn't announce their roster moves yesterday. But if there's anyone you'd really want to bring back for 2019, feel free to call him out in a public forum so that he may hear that and then sign it on a dotted line sometime, Thursday morning maybe.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing else going on Thursday this week, right? I don't think so.
I mean, what else are you going to do, really? Catch a flight somewhere?
Football and then turkey, I think.
Maybe? What are those?
There's multitasking. Come on.
There you go. They're professionals. Yeah. But the 2018 Charlotte Independence season was a roller coaster. It was kind of a topsy-turvy form compared to the way they normally are. They normally start the season slow and get hot in the middle of the season, and then we fall off the rails at the end of the season. Basically did the opposite of that. We started well, did really bad in the middle of the season. It was a tough stretch in the middle of the season. And then kind of started to bring it together later on, missed the playoffs for the first time in 2 years. And it was the biggest thing I'll say is I was really optimistic going into the season. There was a lot of changes that happened with the roster. There was a good bit of, of course, we saw Enzo Martinez move up to the Colorado Rapids. He was a major contributor for us and a major part of our offense as well. I always wondered who was going to fill the role, or in some ways filled the production, if nothing else. Didn't really quite happen. Jorge was Jorge this year, 38 years young, if I'm not mistaken. Still had a great year, but no one really filled in the gaps around him consistently, at least. But yeah, the end of the season it ended on a sour note. Didn't make the playoffs. may have been kind of glad we didn't make the playoffs because we would have had to play Cincinnati anyways. So I don't know. It got to the point where we were like, do we really want to play Cincinnati again? I don't know. But regardless, moving into this next year is going to be very interesting with the affiliation we've always had with Colorado dissipating. And
finally,
yeah, it's been interesting as to why that's been the case. I guess they finally figured it out. Oh, they're right down the road. We should just do that. Logic prevailed, I suppose. But it's going to be interesting because from a fan perspective, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's been this way, but it's kind of appeared in some ways that we've waited to see what Colorado is going to bring us as far as filling in gaps for the roster. We can't do that this year. And it's an interesting dynamic because if we didn't have the affiliation this year, we would have been in deep trouble. Of course, we would have logically filled some roles, but just the way the season went without that affiliation, it would have been difficult to even finish where we did. Sure. But as far as players returning that I'd like to see, it's tough because I would like to see a number of players return because there's some quality players that I would like to have come back. I mean, Joel Johnson's a main guy. Maybe didn't have the best year this year, but he has gotten some time with the I think it's Liberia international team with the League of Nations Cup in Africa. He's been playing with them for a little while this season as well. Definitely like to see Donnie Smith come back. He had an injury-plagued season, did not get much time. Would like to see him come back because he's a local guy as well. Can't forget about Brandon Miller, friend of the BGN network, of course.
Hunt you down if you didn't say his name.
Yes. I would certainly like for him to come back because he was another, similar to Donnie Smith, he had some injuries, mostly the front of the season. He did have an injury that kind of made his season a little bit weird as far as playtime goes, especially being a keeper. But there is going to be a lot of changes with the roster by default because we already know Jung-Soo Lee has retired officially. He was already an older defender as well. We signed some players later in the season that I imagine won't come back. We know for a fact one player we know won't be coming back is Eamon Zayed as he signed for Chattanooga Red Wolves SC. And then what's his name? Gebhardt will be going out to El Paso. So as much as I don't want it to happen as far as changes with the roster and the same sort of thing that happened for the 2017 or 2018 season as far as roster changes that may have contributed to inconsistency, it's going to happen, quite frankly. By default, we're going to have to fill a lot of really important holes with some key players and figure how that works out. Love to see Jorge Herrera come back. Just to kind of put a bow on this, he's going to be 39 at the end of the season. And you wonder if he can really produce at the rate he has or be a consistent starter for another year. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting transition time and see how the club moves into this new era, I guess you could say.
Is there a part of you that maybe thinks that not having that affiliation opens up, Jeffries or whoever it may be to make roster moves a little earlier and maybe with a little bit less pressure from somebody else to make the right roster moves?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting as well because with us losing the affiliation, it means we're going to have to be more independent.
Hey. Tagline for 2018, hashtag be more independent. There you go, whoever's in Charlotte.
But the interesting thing as well is the very maybe a week or 2 month at the most before the 2018 season, we got a new primary owner in Mike D'Amico. So from what I had heard, him joining the team, that part of the season or the off season, it didn't really affect us building that roster. So it's going to be interesting to see if his pockets, I guess you could say, will yield a more positive or a higher quality player to be able to come to Charlotte.
Right. If he's willing to splash the cash a little bit, as it were.
Exactly.
To make it oversimplified and to downplay what being an owner in this league is.
Yeah. He's got nothing else going on. This is just his main. This is his baby, I guess. Not really, but
bored. What should I do? And someone went, "Well, soccer's kind of big right now." And he's like, "All right, whatever."
No, but yeah, and the interesting thing I'll say as well is in talking with him and meeting with him a couple times and just getting to know him as a person, it doesn't feel like he would be doing this loosely. So, and he's a very high quality person, I would say, and he's not gonna jump into a venture just to say that he's dipped his toes in the soccer world.
Fair enough.
So I'm curious how it's gonna work. I my optimism had kind of died at the end of this season. It took a while, but it's kind of died. So we've yet to see if that will be reborn, I guess.
He is not a man in your limited interaction, obviously, that strikes you as a guy that's okay with, or maybe that just wants to sit back and watch his initial investment just gain, capital by the league growing kind of thing.
Yeah, it definitely seems like he's got direct intentions to make an impact with the club in a very positive way. So, yeah.
Mr. Ashcraft, you are involved heavily with the Pittsburgh Riverhounds in some way, shape, or form. How was their 2018? If you could just put a little bit of emphasis on that playoff defeat, that would be nice. And then, who are you looking? I guess, who are you excited for them bringing back in 2019? Or if there's anyone that's out of contract or might be negotiating right now, if you would like to make a public plea for them to stay with the team in the 2019, that was your chance.
Do you have some salt over there on your desk or something, man?
A bit of gin.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think, 2018 was fun. I mean, for a fan of the Riverhounds, I mean, I sat in the stands for the 2 years previous to this, 2016 and 17, and went, man, this is getting depressing going to these games every Saturday night. So, this season was fun to kind of experience success in some sort of way. And I think, similar to you guys, Richard, I think there was some semblance of chaos in the offseason for us too. Not nearly as much as you guys, but I think it seemed like they potentially went into the offseason thinking like we're going into next season with Dave Brandt as the coach. And then they weren't able to get an exemption or something. And so they had to move to somebody with the correct license. And so that, I think that, Tuffy getting that call from the Dworkins of, hey, we're folding for this year and you should call Bob, was a very fortunate thing. So I think it'll be interesting to see, I think it'll off season and a higher budget than what he had in Rochester, I think. So it'll be interesting to see what he can kind of bring, because he was bringing not even the core, but sort of two teams together last year and trying to piece them together on the field. And so now he's starting fresh or able to kind of start with a core that has now played together for a year, and be able to kind of add pieces to that rather than kind of piecing together a team, full out. So I think that that's what's interesting for me. Speaking of that playoff game, were you aware, or did you know that the Dworkins were actually at that game?
No, I had no idea.
Yeah, Bob, or Tuffy actually brought them over to the Steel Army like cookout before the game and was like, "Hey, this is the Dworkins from Rochester," and they all had Rochester, gear on or whatever. But they were like, "This is Dworkins from Rochester. You gotta think they know." So that was interesting that they were there, or that they're still into, they still have that relationship with Bob or whatever. So, so that was cool. But the playoff game was obviously disappointing. I think it was, I'm not going to put any blame on it. I think both teams played a good game for what the weather was that night and everything else that went into that game. I think it was a well played game that went to PKs, and you just never know what happens during PKs, and so that was just a wild sort of ending to the season. But that's what I'm excited. I think that's what I'm excited about, is just Bob having an off season to kind of put together the roster that he wants to put together, maybe bring in some players that he wants to bring in, and kind of see how he can move the club forward. I think as far as signings, you're always glad to see a guy like Nico Brett get re-signed and brought back. I think if we can bring in a complementary piece up top for him, I think that makes us a better team. I like the fact that we brought Kevin Kerr back. I think leadership and veteran leadership matters on a young team like the Riverhounds are. And so I'm excited to see what happens next season. I think we go in looking good, and hopefully we can make good on kind of the momentum that was built this season in Pittsburgh, and even as far as attendance and everything else that was up for some games and still down for others. But I think if we can build on that, I think that's going to be a good thing for us.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's really cool that and if people in the USL show listening sphere, I was gonna say like the Twitter sphere, but that's undercutting it. If people think that like the exit interviews are too quick, or I don't know, if anyone's got a problem with the way I'm running things right now, which sounds like I'm being combative about it, I'm really not. It's just how people let me know, because I'm open to suggestions and switching things around and things like that. I just figure that since the last 2 weeks we've had not our usual cast of friends in Phil, Pony, Kev, or Ryan, that I'd bring in some other soccer friends, let them talk about whatever they want. Because let's be honest, if you follow this league or follow a team in this league, you know a good bit about the other teams that your team plays, so it works out. And then just a chance to give everyone some exit interviews. So because Lord knows there's only 900 teams next year. I still got to figure out how to talk about League One, everybody. Yeah, I like the Chattanooga logo. Fight me over it.
Yeah, Forward Madison.
No.
You're not a flamingo guy?
I'm not a flamingo guy. I just really hate Forward Madison as a name. I like their Twitter brand. The like, we're going to be Minnesota United, but nah. Or sorry, Minneapolis City, but nah. Like, that's good. Or like sarcastic or whatever. But like the name is just so bad. The crest isn't even awful. Like it's fine, but the name is just can't do it.
If the city flag wasn't so good,
the city flag is beautiful. You posted that, and I got really sad because it's really.
It was like it's right there. You can use the city flag, and it instantly makes it that much better. But.
Not here nor there.
Are there people that don't like the Chattanooga logo?
Yeah.
I didn't read that.
Ken doesn't, apparently, and he's the one that's closest in proximity to Chattanooga. So I guess, but I'm all for more animals. With the whole soccer crust, whatever. Hey, Ben, you're not actually talking right now. You're talking, but you're not talking.
I've been talking into myself this whole time. Sorry. Thank you for that. I don't know. Maybe it's too easy to hate their logo by default.
Okay.
The Chattanooga I'm referring to. I just feel like it looks like it was a rush job, and I like more simplistic type designs. And the expression on the fox, it wants to be aggressive, but it's not. It's more like it wants to say something to you, but it doesn't want to be upfront about it, and you can't read it.
It looks like it's mad you woke it up from its nap.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's
good.
That's everyone's been there. All right.
It's the People's Club.
Maybe I haven't looked at it long enough. I feel like I didn't even look at it all that much, but I saw they were doing a giveaway. There was if you like this and tag 3 friends and whatever, and I immediately was like, I'm gonna like this and tag 3 friends, and maybe I can win this pack of stuff.
Your Chattanooga social media team and/or front office. Contrary to what I'm doing right now and how many people we've had on this show, which I estimated earlier, 60. I don't have 3 friends. In the way that you're describing, but I can't get to 3. So there is room, contrary to what it looks like, on this scarf rack behind me. If you guys want to send me something and not charge me $40 for it, I'll pay for shipping.
Yeah. Don't be like 901 Memphis. Don't do it.
Speaking of League One, I feel really bad for FC Tucson, who is isolated on the West Coast.
Yeah.
I mentioned it before, but you'd rather have the affiliate with Phoenix Rising be the one that has to travel all over the place, right?
I guess, but still.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's better than if they did the reverse with Richmond and had everyone on the West Coast, and they were kickers, you've got to just travel the entire way.
You can do it.
Conference. Yeah, that's good.
Have they announced their League One games shown on ESPN Plus, or are they going to be YouTube? Or I don't think they've gotten that far.
I have no idea.
TBD. I feel like the logical solution is YouTube, but because YouTube's where's all the soccer at? They're probably missing the soccerdom. But
you think YouTube is really missing USL right now?
Maybe not. I don't know. They're missing championship. We can't forget they're missing championship
in the March to October months. Remember USL? We should bring them back on. That's actually a really good question. I'll stay tuned on that one. We'll try to get something out of the league on if there's anything in the works for. Okay, here's how this works. If you don't hear anything from us about something that we said stay tuned about, it's because they're working on something. That's what that comes down to. If I put one of those things where I'm like, oh, well, we'll see if that's happening, and then if I never mention it again on the podcast, on it, and I'll get back to everyone when I figure out if it's happening or not. Sorry, I don't like hot takes. Anyway,
they're very overrated.
They're not great. They're not great. How long do they keep you warm for, really? Teach a man to do hot takes, and he'll be warm for a day. Show whatever.
Show him how to heat his own takes.
Right. Oh man.
Oh boy.
Anyway, Richard, where can people find you on the internet and stuff?
Who, me?
Yeah, you.
You can find me at BGN Written, so uslnews.com. You can also find me on Twitter at The Safety Guy.
It's good because you said who me, now I'm self-conscious about it. I never really realized until today, which is upsetting because I've only been doing this for 11 months. Oh my God. That asking people where people can find them on the internet without getting their consent beforehand is probably not the best move. So who cares? And to be fair, I've never been and if you say someone else's Twitter handle and I know about it, I'm gonna out for it because I haven't. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, send all your hate mail to @IronPonyChap and send all the nice things. That's Kevin. Also follow us at the USL Show. Check out our website, theUSLshow.com. Click on the 2 boxes there, patreon.com/the USL Show. Please stop giving us your money. It's too much. And there's a blue and orange box if you're colorblind. It's a gray and gray box. I'm not trying to be, exclusive here. Check out our friend's Soccer Loco. If you need anything related to soccer, and it's not scarves, which you can find at roughneckscarves.com. That was smooth.
Way to work that in. Way to work it in.
Thank you. Yeah, check out soccerloco.com. Tell DK you said hi. If there's a place for you to put comments or whatever, just say hi, DK, and he'll read it probably. I don't know. Justin, where can people find you on the internet if you want them to find you? And also, where can people find a really good podcast sometimes if you're on it about the Pittsburgh Browns?
Yeah, if you want the podcast, it's at Mongols, MONGOALS. You can catch this there. I think we will actually be going through the off season. I'm not sure how frequently, but we will be trying to push through the off season. And then you can find me at Just Ashcraft, JUSTASHCRAFT, on every social media platform out there. So if you want to play PlayStation, at Just Ashcraft.
That's my favorite new plug. I was gonna mention Tout, but I feel like no one's gonna know what that is other than me. So
if you want laundry detergent,
no, if you want a really good social media platform that had a lot of financial backing and then no one used it, Tout.
Not Google Plus. Oh, okay.
Not Google Plus.
Oh, pour one out.
Completely. Ben, where can people find you on the internet? And if people want to at least listen to an archive of a Charlotte Independence podcast, where can people find that?
Yes, the podcast I contribute to with the wondrous, I forget. I think it's phenomenal. Alex Warren. It's called Talkin' Jacks.
Yes.
You can find that on the Twitterverse. It's Talkin' Jacks without the G. There's no G involved. Also, you can find me on the Twitterverse at the Soccer Goose. Mm-hmm. The off season without soccer has turned less soccery. Essentially, it's much more randomness.
Isn't it more your bad music takes about Elliott Smith not being that good and bourbon drinking? Which I'm really here for one of those two things.
Yeah, it's some of those things. There's some bad music takes. Elliott Smith it doesn't do anything for me. He's not a bad musician, but yeah, there's the Seinfeld gifs are still flowing though. That's the important thing.
Smith is dead, and respect our elders.
Would he prefer me to be not honest though? I don't know.
In that case, yeah, I would very much rather you tell me a lie. Anyway, before this gets completely off the rails, I want to plug something random. I don't know what. Man, anyone? What's Mike Sparks' personal Twitter account? Justin.
What?
What's Mike's Twitter?
I don't know. He's not very public with his Twitter. He does most everything through Mongols.
No, well, that's not as fun. Follow Brian. Just annoy him really hard. That's our friend Brian.
Send him all the gifts.
Send him all the gifts.
All the gifts.
And lemons. Mostly lemons. Until next week, guys. Thanks for hanging out. Justin, Rich, and Ben, thanks for being on. I've been your host, Evan Law. I only have one rule. It's a really easy rule, but it works out so well for your daily interactions with anybody. And that's don't be a dick. Take care.
Hey, that's my name.